There. It's Christmas Eve 2014. It's on video camera. With you.
Oh.
So, what's one of the favorite Christmases you remember as a kid?
The first, I must have been about 3 years old. My brother Clarence made a toy, a dancing Dan they called it, and it worked off of a paddle and a man with legs, and they had joints and stuff, and you beat the paddle up against his legs and make them dance. That's my first Christmas present I can remember. Probably 3.5 years old. And at that same time, nobody else in the family got a, I was the only one that got a Christmas present, as far as I know. Some years we got absolutely zero. Nothing. Lived a half a mile up that holler, an old log house, no food, no clothes. And you didn't do Christmas. It's just another day.
What was Christmas like after you moved out down on the creek and you were like junior high, high school age? What was Christmas like?
Well, we'd have a big Christmas dinner, and we'd have some fruit to eat, apples, oranges, maybe a stick of peppermint candy, very little. We just didn't have the money to spend, buy nothing, other than what little food we ate. We were on starvation.
They really were.
In 45 and 46, things picked up and got a little better. And my brothers came back from World War II, and they gave Mom a little money, and we had a few more things. The big thing was that Christmas dinner. My sister Ruth would come home and bring a turkey and roast it for Christmas dinner.
Wow.
And she'd make about a 10-pound fruit cake and bring. And that's all there was to it. You didn't make much of it. New Year's, Thanksgiving, we did nothing but Thanksgiving or Easter. Now some Easters we had hot eggs, and I know we lived up in the holler in an old log house, and neighbor kids would come by and they'd hide Easter eggs, and of course they didn't paint them, they just old white and brown eggs. And, everybody's kind of getting tired of doing it, and I had a hickey fit. I hadn't got to go hide the eggs. Finally, Mom put all the eggs in the bucket. I went around the house and put them all in one big pile under the floor. Okay, come get them. So, oh, here they are, all of them in one pile. I remember that. But I did get to hide the Easter eggs and got off my hickey fit. I found out early on the hickey fits would get me what I wanted. And it was, I could put on a pretty good act. But I got what I wanted. Yeah, Christmas was at school. The County College over in Knott County. Every kid in Knott County and every kid in Letcher County, and I don't know how many other counties all around, the boys would get a bag of marbles, maybe 15 or 20 marbles in a little bag. And honestly, I don't remember what they gave the girls, but it couldn't have been much. And maybe the girls got marbles, I don't know. And then they would draw names, and whoever name you got, you'd have to get them a present. I got a comb. It had right on the side of the comb, made in Japan. And we just got through fighting Japan in a war. And I combed my hair with it, and the teeth started falling out. And I ran my finger down across the top of those comb teeth, and every one of them fell out. And I got home, and Mom wanted to know what I get for a present. I told her, I said, I got a comb, and it broke all into pieces. It wasn't no good. I remember that school Christmas. It was always, to me, it was just nonsense to do it. Because nobody really had the money to do anything. If you pulled somebody's name out of a box or a hat, you was obligated to buy them something. And say if there's 6 or 8 in the family, 5 or 6, you're talking anywhere from $3 to $4. People didn't have it. But now Moline's family was a little better off. Up to Moline was 3 years old, then her dad got crippled up and they had no money, and they couldn't have a Christmas either, very little. And so the Moline was always big on Christmas, she liked to go back to Kentucky and spend Christmas with her mom and dad, and maybe drive down on Christmas Eve and come back Christmas night. But that was a big thing with her. Haul all the kids' stuff down there, give it to them, sack it back up, and haul it back home. But they liked it. And
what are you doing?
Darren, what did I just say?
I don't know.
What did I just say?
Well, do you remember your first Christmas with Andy and Tootie?
You're gonna get your ass warmed.
Moline's parents?
Yeah. It's pretty slow. They didn't have money to buy no kids a present. They just poor as I was. Moline's first Christmas, we was dating. I got her a real pretty blue sweater, and she was fascinated with that. And I probably spent $5 or $6 for it, but
that was a lot of money.
So
wow.
She wore it to school. And it's father-in-law and mother-in-law, their Christmases were very slim. Now once they got rolling in money, everything changed. They would give their kids cash for a Christmas present. But that was after they had a bank full of money and they could do it, could afford it. And the time they'd give everybody a $100 bill, they sure didn't get no $800 or $900 worth of stuff back for their presents. So they was taking a beating. This year, this Christmas is the first Christmas that I've never gave my kids or grandkids a Christmas present.
way to save battery power.
But this year the kids and grandkids is coming by, most of them, and spending time with me. And Teresa is here, and Thursa and her kids. So we're having a real good Christmas. And tomorrow for dinner we're going to have cooked ham hocks, shuck beans, and
Don't fix too much, buddy.
mashed taters and 2 or 3 other side dishes.
You hear me?
And
Don't fix too much, because there won't be very many people here.
I already have it in the kettle. The ham hocks, they're small and they just fill up one pressure cooker and do them all at once.
Well, ain't nobody gonna be here to eat with you.
Well, I'm put them in a bowl.
We don't care.
I don't think, probably nobody may not be here but me. That'd be fine too. More corn for the goose. So, ask me some more questions.
We've already heard them all.
You don't believe that I just sent you.
What chores
Oh.
would you have to be doing?
When I was growing up,
Yeah.
And, I hate this game. I love it, but I
well, in the summertime, you had work in the fields, hoeing corn,
Daddy, where's the big ass?
doing garden work, hoeing garden vegetables.
Huh?
You had that to do.
Like what was the size of a field of corn that you worked by hand?
Oh, it wasn't that big.
Like 3 acres, 4 acres was big field. But you may have 3 or 4 of those.
Then a
One
shitload-
here, move over, another one here and there. But getting about 10 bushel of corn to the acre. But all we had to feed was, we'd feed milk cow, 7 or 8 hogs, 10 hogs, and a mule, and chicken. We had to grow our own corn to feed all that stuff.
How many chickens do you think your mom kept? Like 4 or 20?
Well, she'd buy 100 every spring, and quick they got big enough to start frying, we'd start eating. And by the time they growed up and started laying eggs, there may be 25 chickens left, or less. Keep some to lay eggs and Sunday dinner once in a while. But in the wintertime, the chores was pretty simple. Just you had to keep a wood supply, and you'd buy your coal in the fall, big truckload of coal. And then you had to cut a tree down and split it up and make firewood. And that was a little work, but you had to do something to keep, so you didn't get fat and lazy. But everybody worked. The girls worked in the fields just like the boys. The girls had it a lot rougher than the boys in a way.
How?
They had to do the same kind of stinking work the boys done, and just as much of it. They didn't do what girls do today, which
Bowser's women farmers still today.
What about, how many hogs did you guys keep over the winter?
well, we'd butcher about 10. You'd butcher 2 2, and then in about every 30 days you'd butcher 2 more. And up about the last of March you'd butcher the last ones so that the meat would cure and not spoil during the summer. You had to have your bacon and stuff for the summer, but it was all salt cured, and you keep it all summer. You'd put a string in it and tie it up and hang it up on a pole that was in the smokehouse, and it just dangled there all by itself. And when you wanted a piece of bacon, you just take your butcher knife to the smokehouse, slice off what you wanted, and go back to the house. That's what it'd be for breakfast. Same way with a ham or whatever. And then taters.
I gotta slide through the restroom.
It would take about 15 to 20 bushel of taters to feed us during the winter. And you had to dig big holes in the ground in a steep bank, back in a steep bank, line it with dead grass, and store your taters in there. And cover up the front and where the rain stuff couldn't get to them. Then as you need them, you just go get them. Get out a couple of bushel. We had an old cellar, set them down there. Cellar wasn't big enough to hold all the taters. So,
what kind of taters did you grow?
Cobblers. They were a big round tater. And Kennebecks. About 50-50. We didn't grow very many sweet taters because they're so hard to keep over. They don't last long. Just a little bit of a chill and they turn black and rot. So, taters and soup beans and cornbread and some kind of pork. That's what you ate.
What was breakfast?
Biscuits and gravy and scrambled eggs, bacon.
Boys?
After 1946, things picked up and we got to eating good and living good. Mom got into the hog business and started selling pigs, and she started rolling in the money. We never did get our hands on it, but she put food on the table and bought stuff for the house. And I remember we didn't have electricity. Me and my brother Wallace went into the woods one day to find an old lost hog, and we got back about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The power company had been through there, put in all the wiring, all the fixtures, and out and gone by the time we got back home, and we had electric lights. I was amazed at you just pull it. Each room had a light in the center of the ceiling. You just pull a string and light come on, pull it, and it'd go off. So, electricity was a big thing, and then, boy, just shortly after she got electricity, she had a well pump put in, and we had running water in the kitchen. Now that was a Cadillac. And then she bought a refrigerator.
But wait, the running water in the kitchen was a well pump.
No. It had a tank and pressure tank and stuff in the basement, in the cellar, and you just turn the spigot on or off for running water. That was a big thing, that running water. Then the refrigerator, that was food and keep it over for the next day, and it helped her a lot on fixing food for us. Like she had a big bowl of soup beans in the refrigerator, she could fix something else the next day. And then the biggest thing with a meat dish was squirrels, groundhogs, possums, raccoons, and fish, turtles. We kept plenty of meat on the table by hunting.
Did your sisters ever hunt?
No. And never did fish that I know of. Of course, they all, most of them got onto it after they got married because their husbands fished.
Yeah.
And it was a hard life, but we didn't know any better. We didn't know that we was living a hard, rough life because everybody else was doing it.
Everybody on the creek was the same way.
Yeah, all poor people, so yeah, you're doing okay if you got a pound of cornbread and soup beans. There was a few families that were wealthy, and of course they owned stores and this kind of stuff, and they had a little more. I was 4.5 years old when Dad died, and no income, no nothing, and times really got rough. But then they turned right around and got better. My brother Wilmer said it was a good thing we was raised up the way we were because it made us tough.
I erased it. I do that.
And no doing without, then you have to think, what do I have to do to get something? You know, you have to learn a trade, get a job, make money, and then you have more. That's basically the way it works out even today. Next question, Addie. I'm going to take a commercial break, and while I'm on commercial break, other people will talk to you. I'm not sure how many you'll be seeing, but I'll be back in 18.5 seconds. Small town, and they have these guided catfish tours.
Oh, they do.
You get on a boat, they got all the equipment and everything. You just go out and drop the bait in the river and hook into a big catfish. Chartered fishing.
Okay.
Boats. It's what it's called.
On the Mississippi River.
Yeah.
He wants to go on a charter boat fishing trip on the Mississippi River.
I've always wanted to catch 100-pound catfish. And
now we can't make that arrangement.
well, first all I have to do is slip off.
I mean, you can arrange the trip, but guaranteeing to get the 100-pound fish.
No, you're not.
That's up to you.
You may stay a month and not, but most of the catfish in the Ohio River and the Mississippi, the larger rivers, if it's 100-pound or less, you don't even tell nobody about it. You just, now if it's 125, 150-pounder, you got bragging rights. You can spread it around. You caught a big one. So from 100 pound down, that's just nothing. Back to cutting out of Winchester and leaving the kids and grandkids moving away.
Yeah, you ain't doing that.
I told me and Marlene was talking before she died, and I was telling her that I was going to sell the house and move back to Letcher County, Kentucky, and live. And you spend 6 days a week in the woods doing whatever. Summer, winter, and all. Just live in the woods almost. Boy, Marlene perked up and said, "Alan, you can't do that." Said, "You get down there in those mountains and those old black bears will eat you up." So the Appalachian mountain thing's out.
Yes.
If I do ever go down there to prowl around the mountains, I'll get me a permit to carry a pistol. And then if the black bears show up, I either scare them or kill them. But so
Did you guys do anything with Old Christmas when you grew up?
well, that's January the 19th. On the 20th, the next day, just after daylight, got light enough to see, Mom would send me to the barn to see if the mule, and check the mule and the cow. See, on Old Christmas, all the animals all over the world get down on their front knees and go around and around in circles. And Mom would send me out to the barn to check the animals' knees. And the cows, mules, whatever we had. And I do remember the one time, I was probably 16 years old or 17, and I went out there, and sure enough, all the animals had real muddy knees where they'd been down praying. Supposedly all the animals pray on Old Christmas. And Mom would send me out to make sure that they'd been on their knees praying. And she was always fascinated with that. And often, I never thought much about it, but anytime an animal lays down, most of the time they put their knees down first, and then naturally they're going to have mud and stuff on their knees just from laying down. But so.
And that's on January 20th.
January the 20th. January the 19th was Old Christmas. And during the night, all the animals in the world are on their knees praying. And that's all I can tell you about Old Christmas.
What did you guys do on Sundays? Was it a day of rest? Did you have to work in the garden or the fields?
Saturday at 12 o'clock on Saturday, we got a break. We didn't have to work afternoon unless it was a rare occasion. We'd have all the work would be done by noon on Saturday. You go to the movie, you go do whatever you wanted to, see a girlfriend or whatever. And Sunday was a no work day. If you wanted to go to church, fine. If you wanted to go hunting or fishing, that was fine. But we got a day and a half off every week, unless it's an emergency. So,
if you wanted to go to a movie, how did you get there?
Walk. We rode the Shoe Leather Express. 7 miles there and 7 miles back. You had to walk 14 miles to go see a movie.
Across the mountain.
Yeah.
And not just a hill, but a mountain.
Yeah. Mile-high mountain. It's 4 miles across the mountain, another mile from on up to town, and then it was 2.5 more miles from the house, it'd be 4, 5, 6, 7.5 miles. You walk 15 miles just to see a movie. And movies were only 25 cents a piece. And for a quarter, you could get a hot dog and a bottle of pop after the movie, give you a little energy to get home. And that was it. And Brother Wallace started taking me when I was about 9 years old, maybe 10. I was strong enough to keep up walking.
Do you remember any of the movies that you would go see with them?
Yeah, Sergeant York, that's a World War II movie. I remember it. And it's still, even today, is my favorite movie. I borrowed it off of Margie and Will the other day and watched it 3 times before I took it back. But going to the show, we call it going to the show. And early on, they just had one theater, and then they built another theater. But back then, movies were cheap. You could see 2 movies, see a cartoon, and all that junk for a quarter. 25 cents a piece. But this didn't happen until Mom started getting a hold of a little money. And the girls didn't go to the movie.
Why?
I don't know why. It just wasn't something girls were supposed to do, I guess. Mom wouldn't let her girls go. Mom was always, she totally scared out of her wits, afraid that one of her girls was going to get pregnant before they got married. And it's a terrible nightmare for her. I guess she's glad she had so many boys. She didn't have to worry about it. But back then, if a boy got a girl pregnant, and then when the baby was born, they'd take it back to its daddy's house and set it down and walk away. It's your baby, you raise it. I ain't. And that was a big thing back in the mountains.
The boy's parents had to raise the child?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I know one situation like that, and I was 2 or 3 years older than him, but I was let's see. What else can I tell?
Why have you had it?
You can tell about going to school. When you started school, you had to cross the mountain because you lived up in the log house.
Yeah, the first 2 years of school was, I had to, it was so many, there's a big lumber company moved in, they had so many people, that so many kids, that when I was in the 1st grade, we had to have school in the church house. And 2 years of that. Then they built on an extra room at the old schoolhouse, and they threw us in it then, in a regular schoolhouse, 3rd grade on that. And
where was that school at?
At Gordon. Hurricane Gap
Oh, I was
Schoolhouse.
I'm like a black. Over.
And it stayed there for years. Probably about the time I graduated from high school, they quit having school there, and there were such few kids, they just bused them on down to Linefork Kingdom Come School. Then they got to be such few, they closed that school and it rotted down and no kids, and so what few there were on Linefork, they just bust them out to another school. The whole creek. And when one school bus would haul all the school kids on the creek and still have empty seats, so everything changed.
No. It'll go down. This thing is not it's fine. You guys can switch.
When was it you moved to Indiana?
Let him sit there and charge.
And the first time was in right after we got married, 1960, and then we stayed a couple of months and went back, and I started teaching school and taught 3 more years of school, and then I moved back to Indiana again for good. The last time I moved to Indiana was 1963. I got a job July 13th, July 13th. I worked 44 years and 5 days for the same company. And that's the story.
Do you remember what the weather was like when you moved?
Hot and sunny.
No thunderstorms?
No. Just nice weather. Then the first day I worked for this company, it was on a Saturday morning, and about 11 o'clock it came a torrential thunderstorm, and some of the finished products got water on them, and the boss man, plant manager, asked me would I stay and help him clean up those parts. He got one more guy to help. Me and another worker and the plant manager, we cleaned up all those parts and stuff. Took about 2 hours. That was my first day there.
Who was the manager?
Don Dowley. And then on Wednesday, Don asked me, he said, don't you have a wife and kid in Kentucky? He said, don't you think you'd be a lot happier if they was up here? And I said, yeah, Don, but I said, it takes an awful lot of money to do that. To go down there and get them. I have to get a place, a furnished apartment here in town, and I said, it'd take at least $200. Oh, Don just pulled his billfold out, gave me 2 $100 bills, said, pay me back when you get it. I took off that Friday and went back and got Moline and Tim, and we rolled back into Indiana on a Sunday. Now, it didn't take quite all that $200. It didn't even take quite 100. And then I saved up 100 and I gave Don his 200 back. And that was a big stepping stone. I felt like I knew I was working with the right people that would do that. And I never did tell not one other worker. They would have been teetotally out of their brain if anybody in that factory would have known about it. Even his brother was a shop manager. I didn't tell his brother, nobody. That was a secret that I had to keep to myself, or I did. And well, I worked a while, there was other places would give me a job, but I figured on the long run, I got a retirement. I was working with a union, and just might as well stay there. And that's what happened. But they were good people to work for. And then I had to spend 4 years. I worked a year and a half, and then I got into an apprenticeship program to be a machinist. That took 4 years to do that. And well, by this time I'd been there so long, there wasn't no point in trying to go nowhere and start all over. I had good insurance for my wife and the kids and myself and vacations, and I stayed with it. There's no way I'll ever know if I did the right thing or not, but hey, we got by. So it must have been the right thing. Well, folks, I'm back on the air again. We had a 22 second commercial, and it was a commercial on.
You know what I mean? Like advertise.
And say this is going to be on a film.
Yeah. Yep.
Put it on a tape so we can watch it.
I'm put on DVD so you can see it.
Oh.
Yep. Lester, live on TV.
Well, if it's good enough, maybe we'll be able to sell it. History of my life.
If we could be so lucky. Hey, what's the first funeral you remember attending?
My dad's funeral.
That's a good story. Tell that one.
Yeah, well, my dad was a lumberjack, worked in the woods in the wintertime cutting trees and cutting logs and haul them out. A team of horses haul the logs out to a sawmill, and they'd saw them into boards and make lumber. Well, a tree branch hit my dad right slap between the eyes, and he walked about two mile home, and that limb broke his glasses and everything, and just blood all over him. I can remember seeing him when he got home, and Mom kind of cleaned him up a little bit, and he said, I don't feel so good, I'm going to lay down and rest. And he laid down and closed his eyes and never woke up again. He lived 41 days and before he died in a hospital. And the doctors knew what was wrong, but there was no money to have him fixed with. And besides that, they couldn't move him from that hospital halfway across the state to something else. And so he lived 41 days and never did speak another word. And then his funeral, he didn't want to be embalmed, didn't want the funeral home to mess with him. And they put his body in a casket. Somebody donated him a suit of clothes, put him in a casket and brought him up in that holler, that old log house. And then the next morning, Mom noticed that, hey, he was starting to turn black and blue and all this, and Mom knew he couldn't lay around, so they had to get him up to the cemetery and bury him that same morning. And after the service thing was over, what little they might have had, everybody was walking by the casket paying their last respect, and I was just 4.5 years old. I took me another hickey fit. I wanted to see my dad, and I took my hickey fit, and Mom told my brother Harry, said, hold him up there and let him see his dad. They helped me up, and I looked at him, they set me down, and I never cried another cry, walked right off the hill. And that was my dad's funeral. So, that was my first funeral. My little brother died when he was 1.5 years old, so I don't remember him at all. Pneumonia killed him, and
Well, you were still a little bitty thing when he died.
I was 4.5 years old when they buried my dad.
No, when they Talbert.
Yeah,
When he-
Talbot was a year and a half old, and they just 11 months between us. 11 months. So a year and a half, 2.5, I was 3 years old, and I just don't remember nothing.
Yeah. Some people still consider that a baby, and here your mom already had another baby who was sick and died.
Yeah.
How old were your little sisters when your dad died? Because that's interesting to people.
Zam was just a couple of 3 months old. And that mom was stuck with no income, no food.
And Mary, she was just a couple years old, wasn't she?
Yeah, yeah.
So
it was me, a year later, Talbert, a year later Mary, a year later Zam.
Yeah.
It's a year apart.
So she had two babies, and a newborn baby when your dad died.
Yeah. And my sister Ruth took care of me. That was her job, to take care of me. And I was a year. So.
Are you guys being good?
Yeah.
Are you being silly?
Yeah. Oh, please. Okay, sorry. Hey, look. Hey.
Did you get my charger?
I think it's called butterfly. It's called butterfly. If you go
I'll tell you that story about the 100 dead chickens.
Okay.
Brother Wallace is probably in early June. He'd went fishing and caught 2 big turtles and brought them in, and he had the heads cut off. And we was all getting ready to load up and take a trip. Clarence was going to take us down to Tennessee and show us around. And it was early in the morning, and Wallace said, "Yeah, I'd like to go, but I have to clean these 2 turtles." And Mom said, "Oh, just throw them in the creek." Says, "Don't worry about it. Said, we don't have time for you to clean no turtles." And he took them down and threw them down. He didn't get into he just threw them down by the garden fence and left them. Then the flies got on them, and the maggots got all over the dead turtles. And Mom's young chickens were loose, out running around. And everybody got a dose of the maggots. And he gave them what they call limberneck. It ate their insides out. And it killed every one of them. Wasn't no cure for it.
Oh my God,
And
Dad, what a story!
I cleaned the chicken farm.
And I'm enjoying some nice 7-layer salad while he's telling the story.
Well, maggots are not dirty.
Dad, stop!
Okay, that's the chicken story.
When? Tell the one about where your mom tried to wring a chicken's neck and it didn't die.
Oh, that one was Sister Eva.
Oh, Eva. Oh, okay.
Mom told Eva, said, "Eva, go out there and catch us a big fat hen. We'll have dumplings for dinner, chicken." And no, she told me, said, "Lester, you go out there and kill us a big fat hen for Sunday dinner." I went out there and ran one down and caught it. And my sister Eva, she was about 13 years old, said, "Hey, Lester," said, "I never did wring a chicken's neck." Said, "Let me do it. I'd like to do that just one time." She grabbed the old hen, both hands on her neck, and made about a turn and a half, and she heard a neck bone pop, and she just threw the chicken down. Well, it didn't kill it, but it made its head lay over to one side. It never could straighten its head up. One eye was down towards the ground, the other eye was straight up to the sky. And it ran way back on the house so far I couldn't reach it. And I didn't think about getting a hoe or something and dragging it out. I just went and caught another. Well, the one with the crooked neck lived for about 2 more years. And we didn't bother eating it. And you see how long it lived. And that was the story about Eva and her first chicken ringing. Chicken neck ringing. You have to turn them over about four turns to really kill them. Now my father-in-law, he'd keep turning them till the head popped off. And the chicken would fall over and he'd throw the head in the creek. I'd never seen that done before. A lot of people, they take and
let's talk about how your mom got into the hog business.
Well, she bought an old sow, and shortly after she bought it, it had 18 pigs. She started selling the pigs for $35 a piece. And by this time, the soldiers was coming back home from the war, and there's more money around, so in circulation. So she had a waiting list on pigs. And then she got some more sows, and they'd have pigs. And we had a pig farm that wouldn't quit, and we had a waiting list, a yard long, people wanting them. Quick as they could get big enough to crack a grain of corn, they were gone. And she made a good living just selling those pigs.
How long do you think she did that? Like through the girls going through school?
About 5 years. A good 5 years. And this first old sow she bought, she was mean. She had a gang of pigs. She was teetotally meaner than a bobcat or a mountain lion.
I heard you say that there.
If you stuck your hand over that fence, she was after you. Well, one day, her and Wallace was feeding, and Mom was gone somewhere, and Harry was going to feed the old sow, and he had like a piece of 2x2, a good heavy stick in his hand to keep her backed off so she wouldn't bite him while he poured the food in the trough. Well, she made a lunge at him to get his leg, and he came over and hit her across the nose with that piece of wood, and it just broke her nose. And just a second, she was laying flat on the ground, gasping for breath. And my brother Harry, he was real smart, and he's still smart. But he figured out that if he found some rubber hose with a hole through it, like a little bitty siphon hose, and he knew just about how far to put that. And he ran that siphon hose up each nose hole, and that old sow wore those for a long time. But quick as he got those hose through her nose, that stopped the bleeding, and that stopped all of her problems. And just a little bit, the old sow got up and started moving around. But after that, she was never mean. Not one day after she got her nose. But Harry knew he was in big trouble if he killed Mom's favorite sow, hog. And he got smart and doctored that hog right up, and she lived for years upon years after that. And that was a good story. I was right there and watched the whole thing. Mom never would let me get over that because she was so mean, you know. I just had two bigger brothers, let them get in there instead of me. So,
Did she ever have any ducks or geese?
no. Chicken. I had two roosters. I was about a senior in high school. Had two big red roosters, and they got into a fight one day, and they fought for hours on end. They was getting tired and weak and bloody. You never saw such a mess. I told Mom, I said, Mom, those roosters have been fighting for hours. And said, just, I tell you what to do, said, get your .22 rifle, and you go kill the one that you think's the meanest. So I just went, I got up real close, and I shot one of them right in the head. It didn't make me no difference which rooster I killed. I was going to stop the fight. I couldn't tell which one was the meanest.
That's going to go over great with the Humane Society and PETA.
We had chicken and dumplings. Now, no rooster's okay, but you just had to cook it a little longer. They tough. Really, really tough eating. Had a neighbor guy, they were real poor people. They lived a little ways from us, and the guy, he came by and told my mom, said, Mom, my mom and dad wants to buy a chicken off of it so we can have chicken for dinner. It's a Sunday morning, and he said, now I'll give you 50 cents for one of them big fat hens out there. And said, don't you go get one of them old tough roosters. We don't want a rooster. Mom said she wanted a hen. Well, the guy, Mom knew they was just dirt poor. The guy brought a 50-cent piece over to give Mom to pay for the hen, and she told him, said, you put that back in your pocket and buy something else. Said, I'll give you the chicken. I always thought that was funny. They don't want no old tough rooster.
Do you think your mom ever got Christmas stuff when she was little?
No.
Because she came from a very poor family, didn't she?
Nope, nothing. I never did hear her say one thing about getting anything for Christmas. Even after her and Dad got married, there wasn't no such thing as Christmas presents. And that was just a waste of money. You know, when you didn't have any to start with. And
excuse me.
Hey, talk about how you ended up getting to go to Florida. Talk about that.
well, I'd been to college and semester ended, and I was getting pretty well fed up with it, and I thought I'd just take a semester break. Me and my buddy decided to go to Florida. He had a brother in the Air Force down there, and we were going to take him back to the Air Force base, and that's how I got to go to Florida, and we lived 3 months. My buddy got a job as a mechanic in a car dealership. I got a job in washing dishes in a restaurant, and we just hang out and go swimming in the ocean right down in Miami, Florida. And boy, the weather was nice, and so
Where'd you sleep?
we had us a room. An old woman had an extra room and had a bed in it, and that's where we lived.
Hey, Addie, you can do some stuff for that if you want, but you don't have to look.
And then finally, we got down there before Christmas.
Please, I'm gonna get Addie something.
down there before Christmas, and we came back in early April. And
what did your mom think of you? Just because it wasn't like you could call and check on her.
no, she thought I needed a break too. And then that's when, in '59, she'd send me down to the high school cafeteria and pick up, they had little half-pint milk cartons, plastic milk cartons, and she'd send me down there to get a whole sack full, and use them, and she'd use them to start her fires in the stove and grate.
Oh, that's a good idea.
And I was down there one day, and that's how I met your mother. It was during a lunch break, and she seen me first. I didn't know it.
Okay, it was on lunch break.
And then
She saw you first.
yeah, and then I went into a classroom, and my old English teacher was her English teacher, and I got a somewhat of a good look at her and didn't say nothing. And then shortly after that, they had the graduation, and I decided I'd go to the graduation. Well, when I got, you had to walk up to the third floor where they was having a graduation, and the second row of seats up, Moline was sitting on the second set of seats, and there was room for 3 or 4 more people on her right to sit. Well, I knew where I was going. I was going up there and sat down beside that pretty girl I wanted to get acquainted with. And while this was going on, we'd whisper in each other's ears so nobody wouldn't hear us. And I asked her where did she live, her name and where she lived. And she went into great detail on telling me exactly how to get to her house. Well, a few weeks had went by after that, and I was fishing, and it was on a Saturday evening, and I was putting my fishing poles and stuff in the car, and I got to thinking, now, it's Saturday evening, what am I going to do? I got to do something on Saturday night. And I thought about your mom. I'll just go see that Bates girl. And I takes off over there, and it was getting super late in the evening. The sun had already set, but it was still daylight when I pulled up in the yard. And Moline and her sister ran out on the porch to see who it was, because her mom and dad had just left going to church.
I'm playing.
And that evening. Well, I got out of the car, and Moline told me to come on in the house, and she was in there ironing clothes in the living room. Had a big pile of clothes to iron, and she was ironing away and talking 90 miles an hour, and I must have stood there and talked for like 5 minutes at the most, and I started to walk around the ironing board so that I could go over and get my hands on her. Well, she set the iron down and started walking towards me, and we met at the end of the ironing board. We grabbed each other and went to hugging and kissing. Her sister, Margie, oh, was she ever upset at what she was seeing. She couldn't deal with it. She went out the back door, slammed the back door, and they had an old well, and you drop the bucket down in the well and pull it back up, get you a bucket of water. Well, Margie went out there and untied the rope from the bucket. She was so mad she threw the bucket down in the well. how we're going to get, she went back in the house and said, hey, the well bucket fell off the rope and now we can't have no water. Well, by this time, me and Molina got acquainted, and I said, I'll take care of it. I went out there, and it was a shallow well, about 3 feet deep, the water was, and it wasn't a very deep well. And we got, I cut me a big long stick. I cut me a big long stick and fished that well bucket up out of that well, tied it back on the rope. Everybody was happy. But Margie had a hickey fit. She just knew she'd already lost one sister. Now she's going to lose another. And she'd be stuck by herself. And she had her a hickey fit. But that's how we got acquainted. And the best part, that's the first date. The second date was the next Saturday. We had it made up that I'd come back over Saturday and hang out with them, and I'd be over about 2 o'clock. Well, when I got there, me and Moline was sitting on the couch, and a big, nasty thunderstorm came up. It was thundering and lightning, and the rain was a gully washer. And Moline's mom came from the kitchen into the living room with all the buckets and pots and pans she could carry in one load. And she set one here, set one there. The roof was leaking, and she was catching the rainwater in those pots and pans to keep from running the floor. And about 15 minutes it rained so hard and the roof was so bad, me and Moline had to get up 5 times and move the couch we were sitting on to get out of the water. That's a dandy. Well, eventually they got the roof fixed, and but they were poor people. Moline's dad got crippled up in the coal mines and couldn't get a job nowhere doing nothing, and they just had to dig out a living there on the farm. They cut small trees down and cut them in so long, whatever the order was, and they call them jackprops. They put them in the mines to keep the rocks from falling on them, hold the top of the mines up. And they got by doing that. That's about it. But then things got better for them in their old age, and they got them a new house and bank full of money, and everybody was happy. You can turn him off, sir, so we got company.
Kanan showed up.
Oh, you get this here. I've got it warmed.